Hello, this is Women Locked Up Before and After, and this video is about how prison changes people. One person already says at the beginning, longer and harsher prison sentences can mean that prisoners' personalities will be changed in ways that make their reintegration difficult. Day after day, year after year, imagine having no space to call your own, no choice who to be with, what to eat, or where to go. There is threat and suspicion everywhere. Love or even a gentle human touch can be difficult to find. You are separated from family and friends. If they are to cope, then prisoners confined to this kind of environment have no option but to change and adapt. This is especially true for those facing long-term sentences. In England and Wales, around 43% of sentences now last more than 4 years. In a report on the psychological impact of imprisonment for the U.S. government, the social psychologist Craig Haney, who collaborated with Philip Zimbardo on the infamous Stanford prison experiment, was frank. Few people are completely unchanged by the prison experience. Based on their interviews with hundreds of prisoners, researchers at the Institute of Criminology at the University of Cambridge went further, stating that long-term imprisonment changes people to the core, or in the stark words of a long-term inmate interviewed to research published in the 1980s, after years in prison, you ain't the same. In the field of personality psychology, it used to be believed that our personalities remain largely fixed in adulthood, but recent research has found that, in fact, despite relative stability, our habits of thought, behavior, and emotion do change in significant, consequential ways, especially in response to the different roles that we adopt as we go through life. It is almost inevitable that time spent as a prisoner in a highly structured yet socially threatened environment is bound to lead to significant personality changes, particularly for anyone concerned about prisoner welfare. Worry is that these personality changes, while they may help the prisoner survive their jail time, are counterproductive for their lives upon release. Key features of the prison environment that are likely to lead to personality change include chronic loss of free choice, lack of privacy, daily stigma, frequent fear, need to wear a constant mask of invulnerability, and emotional flatness to avoid exploitation by others, and the requirement day after day to follow externally imposed stringent rules and routines. There is surprisingly little research on how these chronic features of environment might change prisoners' personalities in terms of a personality that dominates most modern research on general non-prison population. Nonetheless, there is widespread recognition among psychologists and criminologists that prisoners adapt to their environment, which they call prisonization. This contributes towards a kind of post-incarceration syndrome when they are released. Consider the findings from in-depth interviews with 25 former lifers, including 2 women in Boston who had served an average of 19 years in jail. Analyzing their narratives, psychologist Marieke Lima and criminologist Martine Kunst found that the former prisoners had developed institutionalized personality traits, including distrusting others, difficulty engaging in relationships, and hampered decision-making. One 42-year-old male former prisoner said, "I do still kind of act like I'm still in prison. And I mean, you are not a light switch or a water faucet. You can't just turn something off when you've done something for a certain amount of time. It becomes part of you." The personality change that most dominated their accounts was an inability to trust others, a kind of perpetual paranoia. You cannot trust anybody in the joint, said another of the interviews, a man that now aged 52. I do have an issue with trust. I do not trust anybody. That's what he said. On interviews with hundreds of UK prisoners undertaken by Susie Hewley and her colleagues at the Institute of Criminology painted a similar picture. Many told us that they had undergone significant and sometimes wholesale personal transformations, the researchers wrote in 2015. The prisoner described a process of emotional numbing. It does harden you. It does make you a bit distant. One said, explaining how people in jail deliberately conceal and suppress their emotions. It is who you become, and if you are hardened in the beginning, then you become even harder. You become even colder. You become more detached. Another prisoner stated, I kind of don't have feelings for people anymore. That's what they said. One could characterize this as a form of extreme low neuroticism or high emotional stability or flatness, combined with low agreeability, in other words, not the ideal personality shift for the return to the outside world. That is certainly the concern of Hewley and her colleagues as the long-term prisoner becomes adapted. In the true sense of the term, the imperatives of a sustained period of confinement, he or she becomes more emotionally detached, more self-isolating, more socially withdrawn, and perhaps less well suited to life after release. The interview-based studies so far involve long-term prisoners incarcerated for many years, but an exploratory paper published in February 2018 used psychological tests to show that even a short stay in prison had an impact on personality. That's right. I mean, a couple of days alone, I don't care who. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that even just a couple of days can impact somebody's life. Not everybody can deal with it like other people can. Some people can deal with it and not bother them a bit. But the researchers led by Jesse Maher tested 37 prisoners twice, 3 months apart. At the second test, they showed increased impulsivity and poor attentional control. These kinds of cognitive changes could indicate that their consciousness, a trait associated with self-discipline, orderliness, and ambition, has deteriorated. The researchers think the changes they observed are likely due to the improvised environment of the prison. However, other findings, some glimmers of hope. Researchers compared the personality profiles of maximum security prisoners in Sweden with various control groups, including college students and prison guards. They found that while the prisoners scored lower on extroversion and agreeableness, as you might expect, they actually scored higher on consciousness. And see, people don't really understand a lot of things about what prison can actually do to people. Some people can go to prison and it not affect them at all. They can go in there, just there and talk to people and just do their time. And some people can go in there and have a very hard time coping with reality, the fact that you're in prison. And I know that I had problems with it. The first time I didn't. The last 2 times I did. So I just wanted to point this out, though. This was actually a pretty good thing that I found, and I wanted to bring this out to everyone. I don't think I've seen this anywhere, and I seen this and I was like, wow, I've got to get this out. There is one thing I do see, that released prisoners may be less capable of living a lawful life than they were prior to their imprisonment. But anyway, if anybody liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and please stay tuned for my other videos. This was just another video I just wanted to add, until I get my other ones up and running. And like I said, I have other ones that I got coming up that are older ones, because they were, longer, and I'm going to edit them and put them up. And they're really good, so please check them out. And please tell your friends about this channel, and I need all the subs I can get. And thank you so much for watching. Peace and love y'all, and God bless, and see you next time.